It's really been important to the Planning and Zoning Commission to use the existing plan from 2008 as a blueprint or kind of a guiding document for this master plan update. To say it another way, that it really truly is an update to the existing plan. It's not a throw it in the trash and start over or make 180-degree policy decisions. It's really that document approved and adopted in 2008 has kind of served its life cycle. How do we refresh it, update it, and look forward for the village? One of the changes that the Planning and Zoning Commission has made is that in the 2008 plan, there weren't traditional chapters as you think of them. There were more topic areas. And so one of the things that was important to this Planning and Zoning Commission was to formalize the document into chapters. And those chapters are on the right side of your screen here. And you'll see the red on the left side is what chapters or discussion items won't be carried forward. And then on the right is two categories that are new chapters that will be in the plan. One thing that the existing plan isn't particularly great at is giving direction in terms of implementation. And then also with that is the timing or the prioritization of certain things. And so it was important to this Planning and Zoning Commission that this document have that. Another thing that the Planning and Zoning Commission has decided is the hierarchy of the chapters within the plan. So there's the overarching plan vision, which is a really broad statement about what we want to be as a community. And then in each of those chapters, there's guiding principles that tie back to that plan vision, the overall plan vision. And then underneath that, there's specific goals that help implement the guiding principles. And then below that is the actions. How do we accomplish those goals? And so part of moving forward, part of the process here and part of this last third, if you will, is identifying those actions and then putting them into that prioritization and actionability, I guess I would call it. And so that's kind of where we're at in the process right now. So to refresh your memory, you saw a version of this back in January. On the left is the existing overarching vision in the 2008 master plan. And on the right is essentially what has been vetted through the public process, through Planning and Zoning Commission, and through the CAT. And you'll see the changes there in red. Again, it speaks to the fact that it's really not a wholesale change of the document. It really is, how do we refresh it and make it usable moving forward for future staff and for future council. With that, I will take a drink of water and let Mr. Palmberg jump in.
Thank you, Paul. So I understand you all have received the draft language. This is essentially the policy meat and potatoes of the document, as I think Paul explained in his memo to you all.
Yeah, and I should mention too, if for some reason you forgot to bring a packet or didn't have it or whatever, there was extra copies of that provided on the dais for you this evening.
Right, so first one I'm going to talk about is community character. This topic received a lot of input from the CAT and from the community from the first survey and the second survey. So as you can see in your packet here, we have two guiding principles, and these have been reviewed with the community at the second open house. We basically, at the second open house, came back with, we heard from you all, here are some draft guiding principles, and gathered input on those guiding principles along with the survey questions, which informed the goals and action items you see here for this section of the plan and for the subsequent sections, which we'll go through here in the coming minutes. So for community character, we had two guiding principles, three draft goals, and within each draft goal, we had four draft action items for the first draft goal. So the guiding principles really spoke to, again, many common areas of character like streetscapes, trails, and open spaces, and importantly, tying back to the community vision, which Paul mentioned, emphasize a pastoral, safe, and serene and open character. And then also importantly, the second guiding principle alludes to the balance between private property rights and efforts to really promote the desired character of the community. And so if you look back at the previous master plan of 2009, there's some of these elements that are going to carry through to this current plan in this section and also the following sections. So the first draft goal concerns that pastoral, safe, serene, and open character of the village, and there's action items that follow. Second draft goal concerns preserving the safe, serene, and open character of the village through design and maintenance of streetscapes, public lands, and public facilities. And the third draft goal concerns preserving key wildlife corridor and habitat in the village and designing trails and plantings accordingly to promote the viability of these corridors and wildlife habitat. So that third one, the emphasis on wildlife came through really the input of the first survey. There was a lot of input from that survey and also from CAT members to really emphasize wildlife and habitat as an element of community character. And so with that, without going into all the reading of these, I think let's open up for comments from you all.
The only thing I would also add is at our last CAT meeting on July 27th, we shared this same language with them, and they had a very robust conversation in the best way possible about refining this language. So this language certainly is not final. We are still working through that, and we're going to continue to work through that with Planning and Zoning Commission and the CAT. But like I said, we want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to see it. What we don't want to have happen is, okay, here's the final document, right? Let us know your thoughts, right? So, so again, if you have comments, great. If not, we can continue to motor through this. You let us know what works best for you guys.
I'll also add, Paul, the CAT mentioned with regard to community character, they wanted to see mention of safety and crime woven in here. So we're still kind of working through that input from the CAT, but there was a pretty robust discussion concerning safety and crime and perception of crime and so forth in the village.
Just basic question, who actually wrote this? Was it drafted by?
I don't know. Do you like it?
That's a loaded question.
Jay would like to take credit if you don't like it. If you do like it, it was Britt and myself. Now, it's been kind of anytime you do these, there's not necessarily one point of authorship, right? We start with kind of a thought that somebody puts on the paper, and then Britt and I will bounce ideas off of each other. Chris will weigh in. If it's a certain topic, maybe Jay or Emily or somebody else from staff will weigh in. But I wouldn't say there's necessarily one person that would be the author. But finally, ultimately, the language would go through the CAT and the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We also get written edits, red lines, and additions and subtractions from P&Z members directly and CAT members directly. Mm-hmm. So if you were ever to look at a track change document from beginning to end, oh my Lord, it would be indecipherable just because there's so many different inputs on the language itself.
Right. So someone starts the process with initial drafts. You have to start somewhere. It's myself or Paul, and then we bounce it internally. Then we've bounced it off the CAT and the P&Z as we've gone through this really the last, 4 months or so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several months, yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're just kind of looking for fatal flaws tonight. If you don't have any comments on this particular section, we can move along.
Yeah, we're not saying you have to have them.
I guess I just want to understand the context of how does something make the cut? How did wildlife make the cut to, and at what point do you put it in as a action or a goal? And at what point did you say, no, then we're done? What was that process like?
I would say that the first survey in particular, I wouldn't say we data mined, but we analyzed all the written comments, all the numerical comments, all the quantitative data that came in pretty robustly. There was actually a real huge amount of just written comments that kind of went over various topics, in particular on community character. And so we actually went through and analyzed how many times wildlife is mentioned by particular people, how many counts of that. And so we kind of identified those kind of threads of main things that came out of the survey in the first open house and discussed that with the P&Z and the CAT. So we identified to them, here's the main takeaways we saw that are kind of informing some of the action items here, got their buy-in, then proceeded on to draft language.
Yeah, I would say that's why casting that wide net in the first survey was particularly important, because then that kind of allowed Britt and his team to do some of that analysis that he's talking about. And then we go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and say, hey, these are some observations that we made, and here's kind of some of our thoughts. And then CAT and ultimately Planning and Zoning Commission say, yeah, we agree that's important enough that we should have something about it. Yeah. What that something is, we don't know yet, but that's why we have those continual meetings is we think we want something, and so then we say, okay, here's what we think you might be interested in talking about. And they say, yeah, we like that, or we like that, or no, that's not what we meant. Let's try and revise it. And so a lot of it's really born out of that public comment period, and then sort of sifting through it with the Planning and Zoning Commission and making some professional recommendations, and then Planning and Zoning Commission ultimately saying what they agree with or what they don't agree with.
Yeah.
And by the way, the 760 surveys for the first round, I mean, there was obviously city staff time put to sending those out and expense in terms of mailing them out as well, but that kind of response rate for the size of community was outstanding. At least I think all of us agree on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we progress through this process, there are terms. For example, I could take wildlife. Mm-hmm. Wildlife may mean one thing to me, and it may mean something else to somebody else. No, we don't need any cougars. I'll eat my small dog, or foxes or wolves or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. How do we expect to move this to something where, it's really operationalizable? I'm not sure that's a word, but it's something that gets beyond a generality that could be interpreted many different ways.
Well, I think the answer to that, and it kind of harkens back to our last CAT meeting, is to have definitions within the document. That's something that planners regularly do as part of these exercises, to define what we mean by wildlife, things like that. It's a good one to bring up that actually has not been raised as one need a definition. So that's helpful input. The last CAT meeting, there was sort of an aha moment when there were a lot of people in the first survey expressed a lot of desire for dark skies this, dark skies that. And there's a sense from that CAT meeting of just last month that people may think dark skies means just keeping it dark, whereas the term dark skies internationally and commonly in practice is defined as limiting light pollution that's going up in the sky, right?
Yeah, and I will say, and I'm going to look a little bit at Earl as the champion, it's really important to this Planning and Zoning Commission that this document be operational, that there are clear action items and clear timeframes for action items. Not to say that it's so rigid that it can't be flexible and responsive, but one thing that's important to P&Z is to make sure that we when we end this project, we have a document that helps give real good, clear guidance to future staff, Planning and Zoning Commission, and council. And I think one of the ways that we'll be able to do that is through the addition of the implementation and prioritization chapter, and then some of these definitions to really give some meaning to when we use words in the master plan document, what do we mean by that?
And some of these words in here, you're seeing the version from the last CAT meeting. We still have edits we're bringing in, but there's certain words, again, looking at Earl there, words like explore, people want to get to more actionable verbs. So the words you use, the verb choice, or so on and so forth, that actually helps a lot in terms of making a plan operable or successful. Yeah.
No fatal flaws on number 1.
Okay.
The next chapter in the document will be land use.
Hey, hang on a second, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying to get my thoughts together there. I guess under community character, that is where this master plan is going to house anything regarding public safety, safety of the community, crime.
No, not specifically.
Okay.
There
so
may
I
be
just don't
elements of
see
that
it
in
any
here.
of the other 5 headline topics that are in here. So is community character, land use, parks and trails, transportation, and infrastructure, sustainability, are these 7 implementation, are they topics for tonight's agenda? I'm sorry if I'm maybe a bit behind here. I'm trying to understand, are these 6 or 7 items in here, are they the content of what the big headers are going to be in the master plan?
They'll be the individual chapters.
If you will?
Mhm.
Okay. So where, in which chapter would crime and safety issues be generally housed?
I don't think there's going to be one specific one. I think that that's one of those topics we're probably going to see throughout the document. One thing I would say, just frankly, is that was part of the discussion that we had with the CAT at the last meeting on July 27th, is they identified that there is opportunity for more discussion of crime and safety and some things like that throughout the document. I will say this is a chapter where that came up fairly frequently. And so that's been one of our charges coming out of that meeting, is to come up with some options and some language and what we think they mean by that in order for the Planning and Zoning Commission to chew on and then ultimately to present back to the CAT.
Okay.
So I think your comment's well taken and it's very timely. If there's things that you'd like to see, or if there's areas within the plan you think it may be more appropriate, we would love to have that feedback so we can incorporate it. And now is actually a great time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Britt and Paul, your whole team, you guys have done.
Overall, I think the action items are the place to have that specificity and that clear direction. But that's a great example, that specific one that you mentioned about the trees. Sometimes the plan should not put council in an unwinnable position, because there are other factors other than just community desires that go into that decision. There's the legal basis. There's property rights. There's a whole variety of issues that are associated with that. And so we don't want to put the plan in the hole, if you will, or sort of almost guaranteed to fail before we've even got started. So some of those, by definition, are not going to be as direct action items as others. I do want council to know, though, our Planning and Zoning Commission, we do not have a meeting where this topic is not discussed robustly. They are fully aware, and your champion of this topic is sitting here tonight. It should not go without proper appreciation. This is the biggest topic for Commissioner Holen. And I would offer to you that when there is the right opportunity and the good environment for that direct action, it will be there. There just might be a few circumstances where it's more difficult for it to be that direct.
Well,
That's all.
and that's just wordsmithing. I mean, you need to say when feasible, then, or to, for trees, to the extent feasible, increase, preserve trees around, or utilities, but utility underground, yeah, I know it's not going to happen next year, but you can still put it in there, and then council have to figure out how to do it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't tell them, as an action item, go, do this, or, go to this, or do that, because who knows, right? You can't. But just the goal of getting them undergrounded is all we need. All council needs to make them figure out how they're going to do it. Is one of my suggestions.
Agreed.
But it's going to be different for everything, obviously. But a lot of it's wordsmithing about, you need to hedge your bets when things may not be legally possible, and you just say, hey, you just do your best.
And I might just say, since you guys brought it up, I'm really pleased that Paul can tell you, discuss was thrown out almost immediately. I gave a comment immediately ago, get that out of it. Promulgate
He did.
or adopt a tree ordinance, which is
Pursue.
in line with the mayor's comment.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, you're seeing the version pre.
Well, and again,
Discussion in July.
I don't mean to limit that comment to trees.
Right.
It's that clarity of direction. If you're gonna err one way or the other, I would try to be clearer and let the next council figure out, things will change, the environment will change. So decisions and priorities will have to change to some degree, but I think the better direction that you can give them, the clearer it is, the more valuable the outcome will
Yeah,
be.
it is a high level document. The planning, it is, and it's not anything that anybody can sue over or anything like that, because that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to set the broad goals. Mm-hmm. But if you feel like you're getting down in the weeds too much, then just take it out, because that's not its purpose. It shouldn't be doing that kind of work. Yeah, that's not its job. So, my view. All right, I'm gonna go on.
No, great discussion. Thank you. So the next chapter is land use. Again, I'm not going to go through and read this verbatim, but it was pretty clear in the first round of community input that the predominant land use in the village should remain single-family detached, and there was a lot of feedback that is a desire of this community. And so this is one of those, Mr. Mayor, where there probably is a strong opportunity to say this is what it said in 2008, and the intent of it really hasn't changed. It's formatted a little differently, and it may say it a little differently, but really what we're saying is this is who we are and this is what we want to be. So within there are two draft goals, again, to maintain the existing land use development patterns in the village, and to protect the floodplain areas in the village. And then within those, there's some draft actions, and you'll see those are mostly related to making sure that we adopt and enforce code that help achieve that guiding principle of a predominantly single-family detached residential community. So with that, I will take a breath and see if, yes, sir.
It's a really small point, but under the second goal, the first action, I think I had to read that sentence about 4 times, 5 times. It seemed like
You're not alone in that.
too many knots in there. But I think there's probably a simpler way to say what you intend.
Yeah, and just for some context, yes, that was another point that the CAT had a good discussion about, and yes, there's some wordsmithing that needs to be done with that one. The real intent is how do we not set up council, staff, future property owners for failure by creating lots that are entirely cumbered by the floodplain and have to go through that process.
That was about the fifth time through. I got that.
Okay, we'll move on to parks, trails, and open space. This chapter has 3 guiding principles, which I will not read for you verbatim. And we have 7 draft actions for goal number 1, which pertains to maintaining and improving the current system of village-owned parks, trails, and open space. 5 draft actions for goal number 2, which relates to the preservation and enhancement of the system of trails and sidewalks around the village. And the third goal concerns preserving Quincy Farm for current and future enjoyment, education of residents, and we have 3 draft action items for that one. So, in large part, the input we heard from the community, a lot of it was consistent with the old plan of 2008, 2009, which was look for opportunities to expand and improve park areas in the village. It actually was written in the last plan, and a lot of discussion about improving the trails. The details of the action items are informed more by the input here of this master plan effort. I will note that the CAT mentioned with regard to the draft actions under the first goal to have a little more language connecting this part with the High Line Canal and planning for that. We do mention the High Line in the draft actions under the second goal concerning system of trails and sidewalks. And of course, the third goal concerns Quincy Farm specifically. And when we started this process, I think we all thought we might have a little more detailed integration with those planning efforts. In the end, though, we are alluding more to tying those other planning efforts in. The city is currently doing a detailed engineering study for the High Line, correct? Mm-hmm. And the planning for Quincy Farm continues. So we're making sure there's bridges built between those efforts and the master plan effort, but we are not, pardon the pun, for the trails in the weeds on those.
We want to be able to see the forest for the trees, is what you're saying.
Yes, another good pun. Yes.
I'm wondering about the draft goal number 3, and if we won't be looking back in just a few short years and saying, well, we checked that box entirely. Like, I know that when we look at the 2008, was it 8 or 9, the old plan? 8? We had Village Center, right? Mm-hmm. Promote and construct and finance and get the Village Center done. And we checked that box halfway through the 2008 to 2022 timeframe, roughly, or 60% the way through. I'm wondering if does this look like an antiquated goal in 3 years? If it were done, and I don't know that it is done in 3 years, and I don't know if it's ever done, right? It might be an ongoing, continual improvement and effort that the city partners with the land preserve to continue to improve, but it's different. We don't have the Highline Canal stormwater plan on here, Britt, that you mentioned a moment ago, listed as a specific goal. It's located within a goal, but we do have Quincy Farm. I'm not opposed to it. I just wonder if a couple, 3, 4 years from now, if somebody's going to start looking at this thing in the future, if this is really a live document for 10 years, maybe 15, right? We don't know when the next master plan will be done. Some cities go 20 years before they update their master plans. Is this going to be an old antiquated line item? I just want to throw that out there. And maybe the answer is yes, it will be old and antiquated, and no, it doesn't matter, and that's okay. I think it's a little, I think it's worthy of discussion is all.
Yeah, it feels like, I think you're right. Ultimately, I would guess that kind of becomes just another park, and fits in under what we want to do in a broader sense. It does seem to me, though, now that there's so much rehab that has to be done to facilities or decisions that need to be made. I think the Land Preserve's doing a great job of trying to get some traction on programming and fundraising and stuff like that, but I feel like we're kind of in a nascent stage for this. So, it doesn't trouble me too much that this is kind of elevated in visibility at this moment in time. And yeah, ultimately, like the city center, it'll, we check the box,
Right.
move on, and it'll be dropped out next round or something like that. Might be the way it plays out.
The other thing is it may take 10 years to get this thing done. We don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's worthwhile leaving it in as a goal, whether it's met in 3 years. Like Randy said, just check it off.
Like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I think that eventually this will be,
Yeah.
we don't have any other specific goals under this part, PTRC header. Specific goals, at least, there are some sub-goals, I guess, under the other sidewalks and trails and parks, but I'm okay leaving it in. I just wanted to see if anyone else had any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'd say, given the stops and starts of Quincy Farms history, keep it in.
Okay.
Now, a question on trails and sidewalks and that sort of thing. I think there's a couple of different ways one can play that. One can be kind of reactive, like a situation develops and we react to it. Or one can be more proactive and say, okay, here's the trail system. Here's where we have some problem areas. Let's come up with plans to remedy those problem areas, whatever they may be, whether it's connectivity or, whatever it may be. So I wonder what's contemplated here. Because I think you want to flavor this one way or the other, it feels to me. And when I see something, I identify gaps, yeah, okay, I can get that. And secure funding, that sounds sort of proactive. I don't know, I'm not quite getting we want to have a great trail system, we want to go ahead and identify our problem areas, build it out, that sort of thing. I've heard people say, we only lose trails because people want us to vacate a right or something, but we never gain them. And are we intending to get out of that into a real proactive mindset?
So what I would offer is, and I'm not sure that this 100% answers your question, but this version is a draft bullet point outline, if you will. What's missing from this is the narrative that gives these things context.
Okay.
And so as part of, right, you're not going to just open up the document and see parks, trails, and open space, and it immediately jumps into this. You'll see narrative and discussion language that says, we value our parks, we value our trails, we value our open space. They're what make us unique. They're what make us special, right? We want to make sure that we do everything we can to keep them and enhance them in the best ways possible. So I don't know if that 100% answers your question, but some of that background narrative will help give some context and help explain what the desires in a more broad stroke of the community are. Does that help?
Yeah.
I think your comments are helpful. The draft goal here, number 2, preserve and enhance the system of trails and sidewalks when feasible. To your point, it's not like we're not coming out and saying in what you're reading right here, we're going to build out a system of trails and sidewalks. So that kind of feedback from you all, that can help us with the wordsmithing and that narrative up front. Because that's the kind of topic for discussion with you all, with the P&Z, with the CAT, in terms of how demonstrative the language is in the run-up to this stuff. I think it's important.
I agree.
My thought about this issue too, just getting is a minor thing, but include safety in here and safety on the trails. There's no kind of language about safety on the trails. So I'm thinking that if you have, maintain safe trails, that allows us to look at the speed limits on Highline Canal and things like that. It also will allow us to look at, your councils to look at the crossings on our own crossings, not only CDOT crossings, but crossings of the Highline Canal at Carr Boulevard, Quincy, those kinds of things. So wherever there's, safety issues in the trails, I think that's probably something a master plan ought to mention.
Yeah, and I agree. And that goes back to, I think safety is going to be throughout the document. And one of the things that we've heard in this last round of kind of getting input is we need to put some more language in related to that.
Just, I think here would be appropriate too.
And I agree with you. I agree with you.
One of the things that also kind of troubles me from a practical perspective is, we have kind of mixed modes in a sense on the trails. I mean, we've separated bikes and people from cars, but and horses as well. But we have still conflicts. They're not with cars, but it's people and fast bikes, people and e-bikes. Horses spooked by e-bikes or whatever it may be. And I mean, it's an evolutionary process, but I wonder if somewhere we should at least address or come up with some kind of plan to start to address the conflicts that exist today if we want to have a high-quality trail system.
And my response would be, it's again pertaining to the language which builds up to all these statements. We used to have discussions myself with FHU the other day about these conflicts and how we really speak to that in the plan beyond just these action items, right? So that's something that we'll want to bring through in the language.
And I agree. And while I don't know that it necessarily gets into the detail that you may be looking for, in the transportation section, we do have some more additional guidance or some more additional direction about helping to improve kind of safety on the trails. Is there an opportunity maybe there to talk about, bike and bike conflicts, right? Whether you're an off-roader or a casual, Sunday afternoon, right? Perhaps, yes, there are. But I think we've teased some of that. But again, that's why we want to get in front of you guys, is to get this kind of feedback so that we can make sure we incorporate it.
Yeah, I mean, I was out of town this past weekend, and they actually had a situation where you've got a road for the pedestrians, you've got cordoned off. It had some fencing area for bikes, wide enough for 2 lanes, and then there was the sidewalk, and the people could walk on that. I don't suggest that's something we're ready to do, but this whole business of friction on the trails, I think, is certainly something I've heard about from people and experienced personally.
Sure.
So it's it may be something that you want to address, and not all in one fell swoop, but how can we evolve, and improve?
A quick question for Commander. What are the 3 E's? It was education, enforcement, and what's the third one?
Oh, now you got me.
I-
Education enforcement and
Entrapment.
Entrapment.
But those words are so powerful, and I don't know if you build them in, but because they work, and it addresses exactly the safety issue.
And that can come under transportation.
engineering. Enforcement, education, engineering. I'm old, give me a break.
All right, we have about 10 more minutes if you want to, I'd like to.
I was going to say, are there topics that council wants to make sure we get to? I would say let's do that first.
My first comment, and I was looking over transportation, as far as calming, we've always treated it as a reaction. Somebody will come in and complain, then we react. And I think if it's under draft goal number 1, under transportation, you've got calming in there. I think that needs to be a separate draft goal, so we do something proactively, looking at what we can do instead of sitting back, waiting until somebody comes in and says, it's something. And I think the Citizens Advisory Committee also talked about that. So my question is, can we add something and make it merely, instead of a footnote there, be a proactive thing as far as pursuing calming? That's my one comment.
Yeah, that's not a problem for us. Again, we're still in a draft phase, so absolutely.
I'd like to see under transportation, I think as big of an issue as identifying Quincy Farm because it's our, it's a big legacy project and property and whatnot. I think under transportation, this Bellevue and I-25 interchange warrants possibly its own section in transportation. And specifically, I don't know how, it may all be resolved by the time this document is adopted, but it certainly won't be built anytime soon, right? It'll be built halfway through this, this plan being in place. But I do think that, we happen to find ourselves in a spot where we've got one ally that we know of in Denver fighting for the SPUI as opposed to the Split Diamond. That is what your draft goal number one is about, right? Sorry, not draft goal number one. It's draft action number one under goal number one is coordinating with CDOT and neighboring jurisdictions to optimize improvements for traffic along state routes within or adjacent to the village. I mean, this is a big topic, and I think it warrants being in here, specifically warrants that particular improvement being in here. I don't know how, I'll leave that to you guys to figure out how to incorporate it in, but I will continue to remain kind of on the record that if we end up with that Split Diamond, Union is going to become a thoroughfare for cut-through traffic, and it's going to have people rolling from Lakewood through Cherry Hills Village into the tech center, right up and down Quincy, way more so than I think we're seeing now. So that's my comment.
Dan, if we do that, do we want to also add in there Hampton? I don't know, the mayor's involved in that Hampton study, and that causes a major cut-through on Colorado Boulevard. To talk about widening that at some point, but do you want to be specific on that or just stick
Well,
to
at least
the,
I don't know what the options are on Hampton. I don't know much about that one. I don't know that we have, I mean, right now there's two options that have been really studied now by CDOT and all the parties. And maybe I'm sitting here on an island on this topic, folks, but I think we at least need to identify it.
No, I think you worded it in such a way as say, oppose using Union Street as an off-ramp for I-25.
As an on and off ramp.
We have a history in the village of, we opposed Quincy, that we killed Quincy off-ramp. And I think you use the same language, Union. You could also say enhancing Hamden's lane numbers. I mean, they're talking about increasing lanes on Hamden because Hamden goes 3-2, 3-2 like that, right? So, but yeah, simply, and this is from the old 2008 plan too, right? It was ensure the better transportation along the arterials on our edges of our city so that we don't have as much cut-through traffic. I think that's why Bellevue improvement, we're support SPUI because that would improve the traffic on Bellevue as well, and that would help everybody, so.
That's my comment on transportation.
I would encourage, I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job relative to Dr. Cog if I didn't encourage you to take a specific look at greenhouse gas in here. Greenhouse gas, you can't see it, you can't feel it, touch it, whatever, but we have among the crummiest air quality, poorest air quality, and certain measures of greenhouse gases in the Denver and Colorado area, countrywide and even internationally. So there's a lot of work being done at the Dr. Cog level to try and make sure that we are taking actions as a region to reduce greenhouse gases. They're not legislative, they can't direct, but at the same time, I think we have some stake in that. Having a bunch of cars queued up spewing exhaust or something like that, is not going to be helpful. So, and there are plenty of things we could do. So I think I would encourage you to visit that topic.
Randy, if you look at sustainability and resiliency, they do talk about some of that. We're talking about draft goal 1, reduce the environmental footprint of the city's operation services.
Yeah.
So I think, is that where you'd put it?
Well, you could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a topic all by itself in a sense, in that there are federal goals, there's withholding of grant monies, all of that if we don't meet those goals. Plus, it's a quality of life issue. Just because I can't see it and smell it and touch it, it's harmful.
I'm going to have to use my prerogative and wrap this up unless there's something we really need to do.
Yeah.
I think this has been great presentation. Obviously, all the council members can get back, give your comments and additional comments that you might have to Paul.
Absolutely.
This is a process. We have a public hearing on this too, right? Even continuing. So
Yep.
this is not the last
No.
word. So please,
But
thank you for.
if you have issues or if you want to talk, please reach out. I'm more than happy to sit with you, and we can always have a conversation.
I'm going to take prerogative and have a recess. We'll reconvene here in 3 minutes.
Thank you all for that discussion. I appreciate it. It's very helpful for us, so thank you.
Got my little outpost of freedom here.
All right, I have 6:30. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Cherry Hills Village City Council. Today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. We will have a call to order now, a roll call of members, please.
Counselor Safavi is absent. Counselor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Counselor Brown is absent. Counselor Gallagher?
Here.
Counselor Sheldon?
Here.
Counselor Blum?
Here.
If we could stand, please, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is audience participation. We have one sign up, Jen Diffendahl. Welcome to approach.
All right, is this good? Thank you. 5701 East Stanford Drive. Good evening, Mayor Stewart, councilors, City Manager Kramer, Commander Weathers, and staff. As you all know, my name is Jen Diffendahl, and I'm officially running for mayor of our city of Cherry Hills Village. It's simple. School safety, mental health, transparent communication, Quincy Farm.
Sorry, Jen.
Yes.
I can't
Mayor, pardon me, Ms. Diffendahl, but I do want to alert council and you to a policy that the city has. It's regarding, it's an administrative policy that says the city does not contribute directly or indirectly to any campaign involving the nomination, retention, or election of any person to public office.
Okay.
So by utilizing city facilities and time here, I believe that
So you
would-
can't say what you're like. Okay. good to
anything
know.
that would be
I appreciate that.
contributing to the election of any person for office.
Okay. So be it.
Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is reports from cities, commissions, or committees. Any report? Okay. Consent agenda, item 6. Does anybody wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved without objection. Next, unfinished business. Resolution 19, Series 2022, approving a ballot issue to be submitted to the voters at the Arapahoe County Coordinated Election to be held November 8th, 2022, to amend the city's sales tax code to require persons engaged in business in the city to collect city sales tax. City Clerk Gillespie, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of City Council. Staff is presenting for Council's consideration tonight language to place a taper issue on the ballot. This is a follow-up from the last meeting when this language was discussed. And Council provided direction on the particular language with the addition of, without changing the city's existing 3.5 sales tax rate, which has been added to the draft resolution in the packet. If approved, this will go on the November 8th, 2022 ballot, and staff is happy to answer any questions.
This version, I believe, has the changes that we spoke about last time. Any questions then from council for the hearing none? And we just need I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution 19.
I move to approve Resolution 19, Series 2022, approving a ballot issue to be submitted to the voters at the Arapahoe County Coordinated Election to be held on November 8, 2022, to amend the city's sales tax code to require persons engaged in business in the city to collect sales tax.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, further discussion, after we had a long discussion already? If not, I'll take a vote. This is just a voice vote, is that right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Frida, you missed it, but we just voted yes. We just passed the sales tax language. But welcome.
I read it.
All right, no new business reports. I have a brief one, I think, here. On the 3rd, we had the Metro Mayor's Caucus that I attended, and the focus on that was the insurance commissioner was there for Colorado, and the state commissioner of, or the state person responsible for emergencies actions, and spoke to us, and we talked a lot about the Marshall Fire and insurance issues I'll report some of those. I think I mentioned some of those last time, but I'll report some of those to the community in a future report about how a lot of them, there's only 8% of those homes in that area have adequate insurance to rebuild to, in the manner that I thought they did. The rest of those are in a pickle. Also attended the next day the Circle Committee for the Metro Mayor's Caucus, which is talking about lots of environmental things and possible legislation. Also on the 4th was a kickoff meeting for Regional 9 Opioid Governance Committee. So I attended that. That was by Zoom. And they are, collecting lots of ideas about possible uses for this money, for the settlement money that's coming through. Arapahoe County is taking the lead because they had the most most to expenses from there, but it's basically that our region is Arapahoe County and Aurora and Centennial. So it's we're just watching, and they're listening to us. We're not voting members, but they are very appreciative that we were there, and they hope to have us there in the future to talk about directions and ideas for how this settlement money may be used. If it basically anything to do with opioid or medical treatment is going to be fair game for them. Also, let's see, on the 10th of August, we had a mayor's lunch met with the mayors of Centennial, Greenwood, and Sheridan. We met at Centennial at the New Biscuit place that's down by Colorado County Line Road and Quebec. And then following that, we all got in a car and drove to CML, and we had a meeting with CML and Arvada, the attorneys for Arvada, and our mayors, and also representatives from Littleton. And we met with Excel to talk about transparency in the undergrounding process. And so they have come forward because, last year we proposed legislation that would have required open bidding, fair transparency, competitive bidding for all undergrounding projects. And that was approved unanimously by CML, by the board, by the policy committee. Also, the Metro Mayor's Caucus was on board, but it still stalled. And Excel basically took a step back and said, "Wait a minute, we'd like to work with you outside of the legislative arena and see what we can do to give you assurances of transparency going forward." So they've developed a series of actually documents that were suggested by the city of Sheridan, and I think Arvada as well. And I've provided those to Jay and the city manager. Basically, at the beginning of the project, saying here's what it's going to cost, and here's the bids. I indicated that I'd like to see simply the RFPs and the response to the RFPs for their undergrounding projects, because that doesn't make them do a lot of work, and we can see what it is, and that's transparent. That's how we do most of our city projects. I'm not sure if they're going to get there. They were taking that back to their people and see, but at least we'll have the first step. The first step is we'll have some documentation at the beginning of the project, what each of the line items is going to cost, and we aren't just presented with a final bill saying here's how much you owe us, which is how it's been in the past, and without knowing it. A lot of different issues, but those are the main ones. A lot of issues with others in other jurisdictions where Excel and the 1% fund omitted huge line items like materials, and then said, oops, and then said, here's $800,000 miss, right? And that could have been caught if they had been transparent and we had been knowing up front what they're doing. So this should at least solve those kinds of problems and give us an idea about, at least some basic idea of what they're allocating to their line items for the undergrounding project. So we're making some progress that has been on an issue that nobody's paid attention to for a long, long time. And we'll get back and there'll be more to report on that, but we certainly will have, and they also said that they have now hired one FTE who will do nothing but kind of focus on these projects. We also explained to them our concern about them having personnel turnover for all the time. Every time we meet with them, they have new personnel. And so, they understand, and, that hopefully will be addressed somewhat by this new FTE who will be focused on undergrounding, and we'll see. So it's good. It's all good. It was a very good meeting. Excel was very, very good, and coming kind of into a middle ground about, at least for now, and see how it works and see what it brings us. We had the mayor's, managers, and commissioners meeting. I attended with Chris, with our city manager Kramer. The focus of that meeting was almost entirely on the Arapahoe County Health Department, which was very interesting. I mean, the way they're now getting up to speed to provide the services that had been provided by Tri-County. It's a complicated process. I mean, they're having to hire a lot of people. Fortunately, they have a lot of people who were working for Tri-County. They've persuaded to come and work with them. And so it will be ready to, on January 1st, flip a button and be the Arapahoe County Health Department and provide all the services that are required by state statute. There, interestingly, are not a lot. The mandates from the state are not that many. A lot of the programs that the health department does are really kind of services, but they're not really mandated by the state. So complying with the state mandate should be okay. But they're going to have challenges in hiring lots of nurses, staffing up. I mean, all kinds. So they're. And we told them we're supporting you, and tell us what we can do if there's anything. They're applying for. A lot of their money comes from grants, surprisingly amount. I mean, I hadn't realized that, but it comes from grants and things that they have to apply for. I think they said 90 different funding sources. which if you think about it, it's amazing, 90 different revenue streams coming in, and they have to apply for grants and do that. And we said, basically the mayor said, as a group, hey, if we can support you, write letters, support you, please let us know, because we'd like to, what you're doing is really important. So that was a good meeting. They have a lot of work to do. And finally, on the 30th of August, there'll be an open house at Inglewood High School to take public input on Hamden. So I'm on the Citizens Advisory Committee for that. But we all should go, and we really should have a good turnout there and tell them what's important to us, because and I've raised the issue, and they've identified it. Cut-through traffic is an issue for Cherry Hills, and they know it through their studies that they've done. They can tell the time of day when the traffic is bad, and they can see the traffic going off of Hamden onto Carl Boulevard and through our community. So it's the 30th of August at Inglewood High School, and I think it's at 4 o'clock. 4 to 6. So that's my report.
No report.
No report.
Last week, Laura ran a meeting to inform candidates, and I just want to, Katie and I attended and made some comments. I just want to thank our city manager and all the directors for contributing very well to that. I thought people walked out well-informed, and so good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone.
Couple of quick updates. DRCOG, I've mentioned before that we had problems with greenhouse gas. They have worked and reworked the models again, and have us as an area now compliant with the goals. The big changes were smarter traffic lights, more networked, the Complete Streets program, some bus rapid transit corridors, and some bike and pedestrian facility improvements. There's also work being done on Santa Fe, up and down in the planning realm. Subway, shit, come on. One more time. The sidewalk connectivity is the key there. You've got places where there's like a bus station and no sidewalk to it, and so they're working through things like that, or places where there's not connectivity and there's no bus station. All the way up and down from Alameda to C470 is being reviewed. RTD, they went through a study looking out to 2050, and basically have said, if we look backwards, we were operating in an unsustainable manner, and we've got to change that. So they're working through just what that means, exploring debrucing as a possibility on the revenue side, looking at various fare scenarios and whether to, how to rearrange the routes and that. Moving on from transportation related to ballot initiative, I think maybe I can squeak under the wire here, a little bit of city time, I suppose. But
Regarding
I just wanted
issue
to
that
give
was just referred?
an update. Are we?
Well, I think,
Not anymore.
no.
No, not anymore. No, I
Okay,
think- yep.
no update.
Thank you for checking in.
Thank you. Okay. All right. That's all I have. One other thing. There is a neighborhood party at Cherry Hills Farm coming up on Saturday, 4 to 7, I believe. And I've asked the HOA president if he would, open it up for mayor and city council members. And quick as I get a reply, I'll let you know. But I thought you might want to keep, if you have the time available, might want to make note of that. Thanks.
Will you keep the noise below the 55 decibels?
We'll try.
City Manager.
I will let the directors go first. Pat, you want to start us off?
No report.
To let council know, you may be aware that the city is in our process, as required by the charter, to go out for our RFP for engineering services. We did that this summer. That RFP closed last Friday. We did get 5 responses to those proposals, and so we are very encouraged by that. We're currently going through the process to decide which one or ones we may want to ask to come in for an interview.
We finally started seeing some movement from Zayo on Quincy, but that movement was slowed up with the weather the last 2 days. So as soon as Zayo gets their facilities off the poles, XL will be in to take those poles down at the same time they're taking the poles down for the Hudson project, and finally get to doing some cleanup work on Quincy and getting that prepared so they can seed that and get that ready for the winter.
Just a quick question on that. So the city's going to be responsible for some kind of reclamation, reseeding project in there, is that right?
XL will do that.
Oh, I'm sorry, XL, as part of the contract that we
Correct.
signed to do
Yes.
that. But to be clear, the owners on the other side of the fence are responsible for the maintenance of that area on an ongoing basis, is that
No,
correct?
that is unimproved right-of-way. The city still maintains that portion of the Quincy right-of-way between the fences and the driven road on the north side.
Oh, I thought we decided, when there were trees down from the big spring snowstorm, I thought that was all on the owners to go.
Only in the improved areas. Any area that's been improved within Quincy, Colorado, Holly, once it's improved, it's the homeowner's responsibility. If it's unimproved, no irrigation, trees that were planted years ago by the city still maintains it. As soon as a homeowner comes in there, which a few have on the north side, and put irrigation in, plant more trees, it becomes their responsibility.
Okay, and that is just for a couple, maybe 4 or 5 streets?
Yes, that's for the city.
Not all the locals?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
That's all I have.
Finance and Administration had some very productive 2023 budget meetings with the city manager, so we're moving through that process. We are waiting for a couple of revenue estimates. One will be the Highway Users Tax Fund, and then at the end of this month, we hope to get the Arapahoe County's assessed value preliminary estimates. So that's going to be interesting. Other than that, very routine.
Is that estimate then, is this a second year? So is that going to be this?
Which estimate?
For the property tax estimate.
It should be at the end of August from the county.
But
very
is that,
preliminary,
there
though.
hasn't been when was the last assessment done?
Oh, it's not a revaluation year.
Right, okay, so
That'll be
it
next
should
year.
we should be the same ballpark as last year.
Roughly the same, yes. Yeah.
I have a relatively short list tonight. Just a couple of items. For the event on the 30th, the Hampton Avenue Safety Study, I would highly encourage as many council people and residents to attend that meeting. The more voice that we have in that, the better it is for our chances of getting effective goals and action items, like we discussed in the study session, into that plan that are actionable and therefore eligible for TIP funding. So our voice is critical. With that said, if you do plan on attending, can you please RSVP with Laura so that if we do get, that is city business. So if we do get 3 or more council people intending to attend, we will need to notice that. So if you could RSVP with Laura, I would appreciate it.
And there's no problem with noticing it, that'd be great. More the better.
Yeah, you bet. If you're really curious of what they're up to, please go. Yeah. There we go. The other thing, there were questions tonight, or there was a discussion regarding updates by the county and the health department is trying to establish the health department as of January 1, 2023. I think there is interest. I've had a couple of council people ask me about progress on that as we go along. That is why we have invited them on September 6th. We are going to have Michelle Halstead and Commissioner Warren Gully to come present regarding a variety of county issues but that will be the first and heftiest topic. I think they're also going to discuss the establishment of the 18th Judicial District. I think they have a little bit of union news as well. You know, remember the legislature authorized certain union activities for county governments, so they will have to work through that process as laid out by the state legislature. So there's going to be a series of updates from the county on the 6th. I would encourage you in the packet, I believe they are going to be providing some information as a heads up about their topics. I know council's concerned or at least interested in those topics. Read that ahead of time so you can come with your well thought out questions ahead of time. So with that said, those are the only updates I have. And staff is available if you have any other questions.
I'll just add to that too that I didn't mention that Commissioner Sharp is going to be on the board of the Health Department, so she's a great asset and resource for us. Also, Commissioner Jacobson. So the two Nancys will be on the board next year of the initial board for the Arapahoe County Health Department, which is terrific. I mean, they're great, dedicated civil servants, and their knowledge is going to be invaluable. City Attorney, City Clerk.
Candidate packets are due by August 29th. We have received several, and we'll be doing a lot draw at the September 6th meeting.
City Attorney, nothing? All right. Next item on the agenda is an executive session, but I will need a motion. Now, I guess the question for council members too is whether we want to continue here, whether we should adjourn after that, or whether there's any interest in coming back after that session. Do you have any thoughts, City Manager?
I do. I do think there's a possibility that council may have direction for staff coming out of that. So if that is a possibility, the city manager is going to request that we keep the meeting open until we come back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
I'll take a motion then.
I move we go to executive session.
Pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024A, for the purpose of discussing matters related to the sale of city-owned real property, and pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024E, to develop strategy for negotiations and to instruct negotiators relating to possible sale of such real property.
A motion, yes, a motion and a second, and we need to take a roll call on this.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
Okay, we will be in recess then. We are not adjourned, but we will be in a recess for executive session, and we may come back.
I have one question about the sales tax. Do you need, how many votes, what percentage of vote do you have to get? Is it 50 or more? 50 plus one or more? Majority of the voters voting on the issue. Okay.
Let's see, it is now 7:20. Is it okay to go, are we waiting for Chris? Okay. It is 7:24. We have proceeded out of executive session back into a regular session. And I believe that there is no action to be taken, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.